Hello, my name is Kay. Welcome to my YouTube channel, 30th Century Reverie Media. Today I'm going to be discussing all the books that I read this year. I started reading again in June, so it's technically only like 6 months of reading, but I went pretty crazy, pretty insane. Some of them are here, some are in the opening clip. Let's just go straight into it. Rapid review, and I will put my top 10 at the end. Alright, let's go. Alright, so basically what I'm going to do is, if I don't have the physical book, my laptop shall appear here. Otherwise, I will have the physical book of many of them. So the first book I got to was actually one that I had half read last year, but it was Fledgling by Octavia E. Butler. Last year I read Kindred and I loved it, honestly. It was really, really good. But for this one, I honestly had mixed feelings. I feel like if you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. Like, it plays with a lot of taboo. There's a lot to be said about kind of the racial component was very thought-provoking. If I'm looking down, I'm reading some of my notes, by the way. There was a lot of exposition dumping, which I didn't really like, but yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on the books. I did not enjoy that much. Okay, next was Burn by Patrick Ness, and I kind of sped through this one. I don't even really think it counts, but it was very creative, and I loved the premise with the dragon. It's like basically a dragon is on a farm, kind of, is the very beginning of it, but it kind of devolved into some parallel universe stuff. I don't know, I didn't get attached to any of the characters at all, so this one, it's kind of left my brain already, which is a shame because dragons, but it is what it is. Next was the ebook of The Power by Naomi Alderman. So, okay, this is where I'll start talking about the books more, but I thought it was very complex and thought-provoking, but ultimately I felt a little bit let down by it. And like, I understand the purpose, but I still felt that it was unrealistic how much it spiraled. I get it was meant to turn into a dystopian, but it felt, I don't know, slightly gratuitous almost to me, like violence-wise, and I ended up not being super into it overall, but it was still worth reading. Like, the writing style was impossible to put down. I just like zoomed through that one. Especially I find when I read an ebook, it just goes really fast because I can like pick the exact font size that my brain just goes with. So, okay, this is where the good shit starts. This is A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. As you can probably hear from my voice, I am Irish. So I was very excited to actually start getting into Joyce's actual works because I had obviously kind of absorbed some of his ideas and general life through cultural osmosis going to college and stuff, but now I'm actually like sitting with the texts themselves. So what did I think of this? It was brilliant. Like, it was straight up brilliant. I became obsessed with Joyce later in the year, as you'll see, because I did read Ulysses. But yeah, I loved this. The deprogramming of Catholic guilt and his childhood experience deeply resonated with me because Ireland is very, like, all the remnants of the culture that he talks about here is still so prevalent, really, especially in our own upbringings in Catholic schools here in Ireland. It focused on the cognitive. Yeah, so what I didn't like was there was kind of a big section where one of the priests just spoke and spoke and spoke and spoke and spoke for pages and pages and pages, and it was painful. But yeah, I just absolutely loved this. So this is where my year of reading started getting really good, and I started really getting back into it, and yeah. So this was where it all started in terms of me getting re-obsessed with reading and reclaiming my literacy. So if you have not read this, I should definitely talk about it more in the future. Like, this is more of a summary video. So okay, slight spoilers for the top 10, because the next book I read was To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. I read the ebook, but I recently thrifted this copy and another one up there, actually. Oh, you can see it. But this honestly might have changed my life. I cried at the end. It's absolutely, like, just incredible. Basically, I feel following... Oh, what was her name again? I need to reread this already, but Lily. Following Lily and the way she paints the scenes. That's what this book feels like. It's like just staring into a painting. And one thing I wrote in my little review, let's see. Yeah, I felt very like I said, I almost cried at the end. It's a wordless song in book form. So it's very immense and grand in terms of its transience of time themes, but it also focuses on such a specific small moment. And that's one thing I really love about Virginia Woolf, is that it's the significance and grandeur of small moments, but she makes you really feel the significance and grandeur and just how layered every tiny second of our lives really are. Like the marriage theme and stuff, with showing just how they kind of are fighting and gradually just it's a feeling. This book is a feeling, and I feel like the feeling is not only the breakdown of kind of a marriage emotionally, but also like a sigh at a friend's grave by the end. That's the phrase that I wrote here. So yeah. Okay, and I finally started getting properly into Kafka. I read The Metamorphosis a few years ago, but I read both The Trial and The Castle this year, and The Trial instantly, again, one of my favorite books. That's why I wanted to record this video, because I feel like this is a really pivotal moment in my sort of literature journey. So I related to The Trial a lot, actually. I felt that it's far more a meditation on alienation and neurosis and the randomness of death kind of scaring you over, say, obviously there's the bureaucratic themes that people have mentioned, but what resonated with me more so than, the absurdity of bureaucracy and just trying to get anything done in the types of systems we have today, what resonated with me was the utter confusion that K/K is constantly experiencing. And also, my name is K, so it's basically about me. Was the yellow wallpaper. So again, this was a read it in a day type read, but it was fucking amazing. Like, kind of just the way that Jane slowly decays mentally, and then sort of the way that men oppressed women and forced them to kind of take on this sick role, and kind of the whole, hysteria thing. And, she's just so stifled and trapped and stuff. And then also it's just very spookily told, excellent writing, just zoop, absorbed instantly. A must read for sure. Next was The Gilda Stories by Joelle Gomez. This is one, again, I started last year, but I finally got around to finishing this year. Read the ebook, and I think this is really underrated. If you like vampires and lesbians, just read it. I won't spoil much, apart from the fact it's It's basically like about this black vampire who's also a lesbian who moves through different stages of her life throughout time because vampirism, and the connections she makes with these different women along the way, and delves into just the different relationship with time, but also the different ways that she's alienated from humanity. I won't say much else because I think this is one you should just read. I really, really liked this one. And I think it's a very special book, even if I found the style dragged quite a bit and it wasn't like the most flowery prose ever or anything like that. But I just think that the concept and execution and family themes were very moving. So I would highly recommend that. Whoops. Okay. I read Dubliners by James Joyce next. I read my mom's copy of it, but I'm just holding up this one for now. Again, it was really great. I won't go into it too much. You all know who James Joyce is, but I just feel like I need to read them again straight away. It's been a couple of months now, and already they're blurring together a bit. I really loved the one about the mother and the musician child. Kind of forgetting it a bit already. But again, like with... Oh, and also the one where the lady is like going to move off to Brazil or something with someone. Yeah, I didn't annotate or take notes on Dubliners, so it went in quite fast, but that might be one I reread next year. This book destroyed me. Well, not really, but it was rough. It was a rough read. I loved... This was No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. I loved the first kind of half of the book a lot. I think as an autistic person, it was just like, how is he not neurodivergent? At least that was the reading I took of it. But then you kind of grow to dislike the main character slightly because he is just spiraling, and obviously when you're having a really bad time and engaging in lots of unhealthy habits, you're probably going to impact people around you, and he becomes quite a frustrating character to deal with, but at the same time you just feel so bad for him all the time, and it's also very relatable. But the way it's written, it's like, how did you even so precisely describe these absolutely terrible feelings? Like, it's incredible. Highly would recommend that one. So this is The Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation by Mo Xiang Tongxue. I hope I said that right, but The Untamed is one of my favorite TV shows. So I finally picked up and read the first one. I need to just read the rest, honestly. If you are into fantasy at all, I would recommend giving this a Google. And, magic, cultivation, Chinese stuff might seem a bit out of left field since most of these are classics, but I love these characters so much. Okay, one of my favorites of the year, Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. Again, like The Trial and No Longer Human, I feel this really speaks to the neurodivergent experience. Essentially, it's just about this girl who does not fit into society's mold in terms of gender and relationship expectations, but she is perfectly fitting into society's and Japan's kind of work culture of completely living for your job. Everything she does is for her job. But again, because she doesn't get married or want to have kids or anything like that, there's something wrong with her. And it kind of just devolves from there. It's super short and addictive. I read this in 2 days. And I will definitely read it again. I've already reread passages from it multiple times. I Love this book. Next, I listened to the audiobook of The Castle. I found it hard, honestly. It was good, and I liked the almost absurdist undertones. Again, like, I dipped into Camus a bit this year, so I can totally see the point of The Castle to some extent. But it was not as enjoyable as The Trial All, and I didn't really connect with it beyond that feeling of nothing you do is right for some reason. I will definitely have to reread it. So, my first R.F. Kuang book, I read this in like 3 days. It was addictive. Yellowface, it got quite a lot of publicity and stuff, so I won't go into it too much, but this is my first R.F. Kuang book. I also read Catabasis, which I really liked, but that was by audiobook, so audiobooks count. It's just that I find that I plow through them if I go audiobook only. But yeah, I thought this was really great to read. I totally get the controversy to some extent, but I do think it was really smart overall, and I loved just the writing style. It was so entertaining and addictive. So I mentioned The Parable of the Sower. Well, I read The Parable of the Talents next, and I didn't enjoy it as like that much. It was I'm very iffy on it. So it flows really well, and it's very, very easy to read. She doesn't add any unnecessary stuff, but it felt a bit repetitive, and the speculative aspects, because it is a dystopian novel, were really good. Like, the whole Jarrett Christian America thing, like Trump, there's conversion therapy, modern slavery stuff. Like, it was very dark, very, very dark. I do think I preferred it to the first book. But again, I kind of have mixed feelings on my actual enjoyment of it, even though I think it's a wonderful book, if that makes sense. Quickly, I will say that I also listened to the audiobook of The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon. It's non-fiction decolonialization theory. I read quite a bit of it in college, and I finally finished it this year via audiobook. Highly, highly recommend. I need to fit in more non-fiction next year, but there's only so much I can read. There's too many things I want to read. Everyone and their mother knows 1984. I read bits of it in the past. I finally listened to the whole audiobook, and I recently thrifted this, so I will have to re-listen to some of it. George Orwell, 1984. Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. This was probably in my top 10, I think. I wrote the list, which I'll read out at the end. But I loved this. It's a retelling of Carmilla, which is a classic vampire story. It's a bit more explicitly queer. It is super well written. I loved the imagery. It really just got into the whole women being, oppressed within their marriage, and like just her being stuck in this awful situation. And I will say that the husband was almost cartoonishly evil at times, but at the same time some of his more subtler forms of abuse and stuff were very well written and just, as I said, subtle, which made it feel realistic, even if he was just plain evil as a character overall. This was released this year, so I'd say it's 100% my favourite book released this year. Not that I've actually read that much from this year. The New Age of Sexism by Laura Bates. who I think got quite famous for some other, I don't remember, but this was awful. This book is non-fiction. It's about AI kind of bringing in a new era of misogyny and just a lot of the deep fake stuff, and it was very dark and not a pleasant read at all. But as I said, non-fiction, very well researched, about reality. Would highly recommend if you are interested to see how patriarchy and misogyny will continue to impact us in the future through this new technology. So, a book I bought a couple of years ago during college that I finally read because we've defeated our reading slump at last and I've reclaimed my childhood bookwormness, but this was very long. Honestly, like, it's not that thick, but the writing was really small in this edition. There was a lot of amazing descriptions. It's The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James. Don't know if I said that. Just for people who are just listening. Yes, so it was extremely introspective. Like, that basically the whole novel felt introspective to me. So it was a very tragic story, and again, I feel like I have been gravitating towards stories of like cool, bright women whose circumstances are not letting them be anything but a wife or something, because that's kind of what happens here. And it's a really sad book, honestly. Just the way, like, she's so independent and funny and clever, but then by the end of the book she's a shell of a person basically and just hates everything. But I think that I didn't really like any of the love interests though, because there was a couple. I only really enjoyed the writing style and maybe some of the like Isabella was great, the main protagonist. But I didn't like any of the other characters, really. A new favourite in my favourite authors, E.M. Forster. The first one I started with, it was A Room with a View. This has 4 of his novels in one edition. Again, literally only costed me €1 because we be thrifting. I loved it. I think it was great. I just don't have many thoughts on it right now. I do think if you want something kind of shorter, very bright and spring and summery, I would read A Room with a View. I would like to save more time for the other E.M. Forster books I read this year because I thought they were far better. The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I don't speak any Korean. This was harrowing. Wow. I won't even spoil it. I'll just say if you want a psychological horror, check the trigger warnings, baby. Then read it. I don't want to talk about it. It fucked me up for a little bit. Like, that was horrible. Metabasis by R.F. Kuang was a total audiobook listen for me. I really enjoyed a lot of what it was saying about the academic world, but I don't feel like I actually connected to the characters that much. They were very, very realistic, and I will give it that. Again, this has been very much in pop culture, booktube world this year. Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf was the next book I read. And I read the ebook. I still don't have my own copy because I need to reread it and annotate it, like a deep reading. But again, this is probably one of the best books I will ever read, maybe. I'm totally on the Virginia Woolf hype train. Yes, so Life and death, from my journal, life and death side by side, the roaring 20s with the shell shock of the war, the unstoppable flow of time passing through celebration and death. So, again, I'm not going to spoil it, but just read it. It was unbelievable and immense and so emotional and immersive. The elements of class differences explored and the fragmentation of a human into memory, connected by spider threads among a pompous, wealth-sodden house party. Yeah, so it made me feel a lot, and that's why I love it. And the language is so beautiful. It's Virginia Woolf. I think she was probably my favorite author, if not like top 5. Because again, this has been the year of reclaiming my literacy and reading skills and discovering my taste. So we'll see. A classic that I spent a lot of time with is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I really got into annotating this one. I didn't enjoy it that much, honestly. I found myself getting quite bored. I noticed a lot of the imagery reoccurring, which I did really enjoy, like with the flowers and stuff. But I didn't like the main character or the love interest, and the ending made sense. I won't spoil it, but maybe I wasn't supposed to like them, you know what I'm saying? But I found the last bit of this book quite hard to get through. If you want a gothic-y, spooky read, though, it is quite easy to read, so I would recommend it. But I just didn't like it that much. The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arakawa. If you want a very easy to read story from the perspective of a cat and his bond with his owner, that is super heartwarming, but also really sad. But also so well done, but also really sad, like sad warning. Read this. It's basically about a guy trying to rehome his cat, but it was really excellent and very evocative, so would recommend. Howard's End by E.M. Forster. This is probably one of my favorite books ever as well. It is about these 2 German sisters and the way they interact with this British family, and who kind of inherits the house Howard's End and just the interrelation. Howard's End by E.M. Forster. Got this lovely cheap folio society book version. Yes, this is one of my favorites of the whole year, really, and probably one of my favorite books ever. So the characters and dialogue, excellent. It has a very strong picture, an identity over a pure plot. It's about these 2 German sisters and their interactions with this British family called the Wilcoxes, and kind of who inherits this house. And it brings up lots of thematic questions, and rather than, again, a purely plot driven thing. So it's like there's the slow fall of imperialist Britain and who inherits homes, what makes a home, and then there's a lot of commentary on class and gender divides, but the characters feel really real. And I think the way Ian Forster writes is beautiful. And that's kind of what captured me with the book so much. Like, there is a lot about a moonlight walk part, so if you want something atmospheric, that part of the book is amazing. And it's evocative too, because one of the characters is so fucking annoying. But again, it's realistic because, you know, old kind of conservative geezer people are annoying as hell. So, yes. And yeah, just flew through it. And the ending was hopeful, so that was a nice touch as well. Next is The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This took like 3+ weeks to read. I read multiple books at once, so I had to dip into other things in order to get through this. A bit stupidly, maybe? Ha ha ha. This was my first Dostoevsky book. And I got very pulled into the drama between the characters and also kind of the big side tangents. But again, I'm a beginner with Russian literature, so I feel like it might not have been the best starting point. But let's see if I can say anything else. Reading journal. Yeah, so I got a bit bored and confused at times. But I feel like Dostoevsky had a lot to say with exposing bourgeois pride attitudes and social climbing and greed. So that was good because I like societal commentary in my books. So the ending, I get where he was going with it, but it just wasn't. It didn't feel well, it did. I don't know, but I find the framing of Mushkin as good, almost wrong. More accurate is his humility and complete lack of pride, serving as an antithesis to bourgeois society. So, yeah, it's kind of humility versus pride was the main theme that I drew from this. And he attacks it from literally every angle possible. Like, there's suicide stuff in here. It's very, it's great. It's good, though, and I can't wait to read more Dostoevsky next year. I just feel like I should have started somewhere else. The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. Somehow I missed this. I read this, like, very near the beginning of this list, but this was great. It follows the Gilded Age in New York and Newland Archer, and he kind of marries based on social pressures rather than for love and all that. And he pays the consequence for it. He feels very unfulfilled, and it's written so unbelievably well. Again, it's just one of those ones where you're reading it, you're like, how did someone even come up with this sentence and describe it so perfectly? I'm also holding The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton as well, because I read this and wow, I might prefer this slightly to The Age of Innocence because I found Lily Bart to be such a tragic... Ow, I hit my elbow. To be such a tragic figure in the sense that she's entirely self-aware of her own self-destruction. She is, again, chasing this social mold that she wants to fit in to, and you know, it's kind of the way she's been raised has instilled her values, which are ultimately her downfall. And again, I think if you're interested in the Gilded Age of New York, that very opulent society, just read it. Don't spoil. I won't spoil anything. It is better to just go into a lot of these books not knowing too much, in my opinion, because it's discovering it that is where a lot of the fun lies. Finally, I started getting into Jane Austen this year, and the first one I started with was Northanger Abbey, just because I just happened to find it first, because that's kind of how my reading habits are. I loved this so much. Like, Catherine was very just cute. Yeah, that's the thing. It was very cutesy and relatable for a lot of it, especially her love of books and everything, because I feel like I've finally reclaimed that this year, like I said. But the commentary on novels being an important art form, there's kind of a rant in this about that. Amazing. So good. And also, I loved how realistic kind of the fake friend stuff that I think it's Isabella is her name, was doing in this. So again, this was a very fun, relatable one. which is kind of parodying gothic stuff because she's obsessed with the Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe. I think that's correct. Amazing. Then, because my obsession was growing, I read this biography of James Joyce by Edna O'Brien. This edition is so easy to find in Ireland. It's in so many charity shops, having loads of these Irish independent biographies. So again, this only cost me €1 to add to the collection. After, I read Maurice by E.M. Forster, which I want to reread instantly. I read it by ebook and I need to transfer some of my annotations because this was amazing. It was brilliant. It was published posthumously because it's an explicitly queer story that was written in 1912 or 13. I think you should just read it without knowing much about it apart from that. It's kind of a Bildungsroman, which means, you're following him kind of grow up, coming of age almost. Besides that, I think you should go in blind. Just know that it's queer and cool and amazingly written because it's E.M. Forster. Next year, I'm definitely going to try and get to the last 3 books of his that I haven't read yet. Snow Country by Yasunari Kawabata, who he kind of got my interest because, again, I dipped into a little bit of Japanese literature earlier in the year, and I don't know, I just wanted to read something wintry. I read this in November on a trip to Manchester because it's quite a short book. And my main thing was that I loved the dreary atmosphere, and it was an absolutely perfect nature setting type of book. The patterns of imagery recur over and over again, and there's a lot of kind of the snow melts as the characters become more vulnerable, and then it kind of freezes again as they're not, because it's about this guy visiting a hot spring and kind of becoming emotionally close to a geisha there. So it was a bit existentialist as well, is life even worth living? So it was well written. It had a lot to it was very thought-provoking, but I just didn't really connect with the story of their characters at all. I just enjoyed the setting, which was a very snowy mountain, super snowy mountain. It's called Snow Country, guys. My second Austen book was Persuasion. I'm definitely 100% reading all of Austen's books next year, the rest of them, because this was very, very well written. The feminist rants in here were excellent, especially for the time. So Anne, the protagonist, was very quiet and strong, but I think what maybe not really connect with this was because it was a lot more serious than Northanger Abbey, and I just didn't connect to many of the characters. Anne is admirable in the sense that she's very independent and is navigating things very well, but she also is kind of the paragon of Victorian virtues. She's so loyal to the idea of staying with Wentworth and just being in love with him and nobody else. And then she's also very mannerly and kind and proper. So I think in a sense the way she has very few faults made her not as appealing to me as Catherine, who is just very naive and just fun. I don't know. But it was still amazing, and I need to revisit the bits kind of about the Napoleonic Wars because I do like history, so this is very good. So, keeping up with the history theme, I read my first Balzac book, Cousin Betty. Yes, this was a bit of a weird one, I think, because you're not meant to like any of the characters at all, that's for sure. But I think that the men were genuinely disgusting people. Horrible. So it's kind of meant to be about money, greed. Cousin Betty is taking revenge on all of her family, but she is trying to do so in a very subtle way and not draw attention to the fact that she's been treated so badly for being like a spinster, basically. That's the story. I did really enjoy it, though. There's a lot of Balzac's opinions and history thrown into this that was great, and he describes things very, very well. I just didn't actually like the characters or the story that much, but it still was written in a sense that I got through it super fast. So it's one that I have to think about more, but that's why I have the physical book. Grief is the Thing with Feathers. A quick mention of this, because the audiobook, I didn't read it, I just listened. The audiobook was only an hour and a half or an hour and 40. So it was a 1-day thing. I cried at the end, and I wanted to listen to it because it was kind of like, you know, it's an Emily Dickinson reference in the title, and it's kind of reminding me of The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. So I was like, okay, this should be cool. And it was extremely cool. Because it's so short, I would just go straight into it and be aware that it's a meditation on grief, and there's a wacky crow, and it's very well done, and I really enjoyed it. I will check out more of Max Porter in the future, honestly. Okay, I'm going to rapid fire the last few and then read the top 10 and we'll be done. Under Milkwood by Dylan Thomas is a short radio play for voices. I read it because it piqued my interest because the opening line is referenced by King Crimson, Starless and Bible Black. Starless and Bible Black. Yeah, I love that song, Starless, so much. And honestly, the first few it's very Joycean, by the way, so it's like the very long play section. I don't know how to say it. It's C-I or C-E, but it's like that section of Ulysses. It's not even really plot driven. It's just like the picture of a town in the most playful, imaginative, not really prose because it's a play, but it's really good. Next was Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. Binged this in a day and a half. This is rough, man. Like, really rough to read. I was a bit spooked out by the end. I would say check warnings, maybe, if you're spooked out by certain things, but there's a lot of abusive themes in this, and it's very similar to Convenience Store Woman with, you know, adhering to social norms and stuff sort of causing immense distress. But this one devolves and is much, much more horror based. It was still very easy to read and get into. I still need to sit with this one. I only finished it last week. And the one I finished last night was Flush by Virginia Woolf, which is the biography of Elizabeth Barrett Browning's dog. And she was a famous poet, so Virginia Woolf used a lot of real letters about Flush, the dog in question. And this was fucking amazing. Like, just read it. It's so short. If you like dogs, you will love this. It's simple as that. So, Silas Marner by George Eliot. We are almost at the end of the list. This was great. It's really wholesome, honestly. The start is very dark. It's about a weaver, an older man who's living all by himself, secluded, away from everyone in this small village, and slowly things happen that bring him out of his shell. I won't speak about it more because when I heard some people recommending this, they immediately talked about things that happen over halfway through the book. It's better to just go in blind and know that you will have heartwarming moments, but also a really nice depiction of small town village mindsets and kind of social cohesion and that type of stuff, kind of like the Durkheim's like mechanical solidarity. Maybe it's organic, I don't remember. If you like that, how that sounds, just read it. It's very short. This has been my introduction to George Eliot as well, who I'm very excited to get more into. You knew it was coming because I mentioned that James Joyce kind of has become a bit of an obsession of mine, and that I also spoiled that I read Ulysses. So I read it from this big 4-in-1 edition, which honestly was great because the text was very big. And I made a shit ton of annotations in penciled on almost every single page. I did kind of a binge session where I tried to get through one episode a day. So I read it in about 25 days because I did not do one every single day. Like, I did take some breaks. And then I kind of had to split up some of the really long ones. But this kind of consumed my life for 3 weeks. And I can't wait to get back into it again. I just think that it had the whole significance of the insignificant theme with Bloom and everything like that. I need to talk about it more in the future, but I think like the whole metempsychosis reincarnation theme and kind of the zoom out at the end was what really got me, where it just felt like so grand and all-encompassing while simultaneously being such a celebration of the English language, because it's so fun and creative. If you approach it from that angle rather than, oh, this is kind of pretentious, like, you can just have a lot of fun with it. You don't have to understand absolutely everything to enjoy it, because I certainly don't. I only read it once. People study this book for their whole lives. Like, yeah, but this copy is gonna be cherished because I will continue to add to it, hopefully, in the future. And I will reread Dubliners in this, I think, before tackling Finnegan's Wake in a year plus 2 or 3 or 4. Because I don't want to put too much pressure on myself, because I have so many books that I want to read. But anyway, that is Ulysses. So, The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. I started this in the beginning of October, and I only finished it the first week of December. The first bit was very, very dense. I'm looking to have a small background in philosophy from my undergraduate degree, which was very history, sociology, language based, but it just took a while to get through that part. And then once I finished the actual Myth of Sisyphus essay, I kind of just read the rest of the essays in this small collection really slowly. But it makes me so excited to read Camus' fiction. I'm going to read The Plague very soon because I managed to get a copy of that. And, bro, the way he writes is incredible. It just is so emotional, even though this was all non-fiction. I'd just say just read it straight away. I could not get enough. I keep rereading bits of some of the later essays in this as well. And he also has a really good section about Kafka, which I again adored. So read Camus. To end off the year, the book that I'm currently reading is Middlemarch by George Eliot. I do not really expect to finish this until mid to January plus. I am 25% of the way in, but I'm really trying to take my time with it and retrace my steps where needed, just like I did with Ulysses. Even though I binged Ulysses, but you know what I mean. So this is kind of the last book of 2025 for me. I'll probably start another small one in the next week or so when I get a bit like slumpy with this one. Lastly, thank you for sticking with me this whole time, by the way. The top 10. I'd say probably Ulysses #1 because I'm just proud that I read it, honestly. But I really enjoyed it. Then To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. Howard's End by E.M. Forster. Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. The Trial by Franz Kafka. Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. 1984 by George Orwell. The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. No Longer Human by Osamu Dezai. I did put it on the list, I forgot. Morris by E.M. Forster. Then Hungerstone, The Vegetarian, The Travelling Cat Chronicles, and Northanger Abbey are kind of my honourable mentions. I would also put The Idiot by Dostoevsky there because that took ages to get through and I feel like I went deep into that book. So I need to read more Dostoevsky next year. But that's for a different video. My name is Kay. This has been 30th Century Reverie Media's first video. Thank you for watching. Bye. Lastly, thank you for sticking with me this whole time, by the way. The top 10. I'd say probably Ulysses #1 because I'm just proud that I read it, honestly. But I really enjoyed it. Then To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. Howard's End by E.M. Forster. Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. The Trial by Franz Kafka. Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. 1984 by George Orwell. The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. No Longer Human by Osamu Dezai. I did put it on the list, I forgot. Morris by E.M. Forster. Then Hungerstone, The Vegetarian, The Travelling Cat Chronicles, and Northanger Abbey are kind of my honourable mentions. I would also put The Idiot by Dostoevsky there because that took ages to get through and I feel like I went deep into that book. So I need to read more Dostoevsky next year. But that's for a different video. My name is Kay. This has been 30th Century Reverie Media's first video. Thank you for watching. Bye.